Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy. Here today we are back on the channel taking a look at another Darkness Ablaze deck profile for the post-rotation format. And today we're going to be switching gears and taking a look at a little bit of a more under the radar card from the new set, and that is going to be the new Blaziken. And so yeah, this is not a Blaziken V or a Blaziken VMAX, this is a normal Stage 2 evolution deck with Blaziken. And while I know those decks typically haven't, had the best chance at success in more recent months, I think Blaziken actually has a couple of cool things going for it that I wanted to sort of explore on the channel for you guys. And if you do want to see this deck in action as well, in the next day or so, we will have some games uploaded showing off this deck. So whenever that goes live, I will have a link down below in the description for whenever that does get posted. So check back on that as well. But going on to the actual deck profile, we have 4 copies of Torchic up first. Of course, we need some Torchics, and I do believe this is the only one we have in format right now. I think some of the others are rotating if I remember correctly. But luckily, this one's pretty good. Has Call for Family just for a colorless energy. You search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it on your bench. So nothing groundbreaking, but it's always nice when these basic pre-evolutions have some of these consistency boosting effects. Just kind of helps your deck get set up a little bit more consistently, which is always an issue inherently to these Stage 2 decks. But going on from there, we have 2 copies of Combusken. Unfortunately, nothing really special about this one. Just for a fire does 20, or for a fire and 2 colorless does 40 in burn. So effectively 60 for 3 energy. Yeah, not too special. Really just playing it because we have to. So then up next from there, of course, we have 4 copies of our main attacker, Blaziken. So Blaziken's a Stage 2 Pokemon, 170 HP, so definitely on the tankier side, which is nice. But it has this attack for a fire and 2 colorless does 130, and you get to accelerate one of your basic energies out of discard to one of your bench Pokemon. So this is nice because we don't really need energy acceleration as a result. Or it'd be nice, I'll say that, but we're not too reliant on something like Welder or other things like that to cheat energies into play. Once we get off our first attack, we can always just kind of keep looping our energy from there. Basically every turn we just need another twin energy or something like that to get our next Blaziken up and running. So once we attack once with this thing, we're usually kind of good in terms of getting our next Blazikens powered up afterwards. So while this attack is nothing special on its own, I think the ability is really what makes this card worth kind of exploring. And so it's kind of like the Gallied back from Cosmic Eclipse. It's normal type, which is fire in this case, but also it's fighting type, which is kind of cool because I think both those types in particular are really good types to be in the card game. So if we just look around, there's a lot of stuff weak to both of those. We have things like the Dent GX and Crobat V, weak to fighting. The new Eternatus VMAX, weak to fighting. Pikrom's weak to fighting. Zacian's weak to fire. We even have Lucario Melmetal still running around, weak to fire. There's a lot of things we really don't mind hitting for weakness. And I think that's really what makes Blaziken have any shred of competitive viability. It's just the fact that it can exploit some very popular weaknesses in the current card game while only being a 1 prizer. So going on from there, let's take a look at some of our support though. We have 3 copies of Jirachi in the deck. So Jirachi, of course, is going to be sort of our ideal starter in the deck that we want to lead the game with. Has this great Star Wish ability. Of course, you guys know this card by now. You look at the top 5 cards of your deck, get a trainer card you find there, and then Jirachi goes asleep. So it does feel kind of bad not having a skateboard anymore in the post-rotation format, but we still have some ways at maneuvering these Jirachis around whenever we need to. But Star Wish is just pretty much too good not to play, I think, in a deck like this. Great at finding those rare candies, those Pokemon communications, whatever you need to maybe help get your next attacker up and running. Up next from there, though, we are playing 1 copy of Oranguru. Playing it for that Primate Wisdom ability, you get to replace a card in your hand with the top card of your deck. So for better or for worse, guys, we have to play Professor's Research in this deck. I really hate research in Stage 2 decks. Like, even going back to previous formats, I hated playing Professor Juniper in Stage 2 decks. I hated playing Professor Sycamore in Stage 2 decks just because you always have moving pieces. You have rare candies in your hand that you can't play sometimes. Stage 2s you can't evolve into. So Oranguru is going to be our way at sort of protecting those resources. So let's say we have a rare candy in hand and we have to research. We can put that rare candy back on deck, and that way we don't have to discard it. So Oranguru, I think, is kind of necessary at, protecting our resources against the necessary evil that Professor's Research is in a deck like this. Up next from there, though, we have 1 copy of Galarian Zigzagoon. So this is our attempt at maybe fixing our ADP matchup a little bit, because if we are attacking into ADP, they have 280 HP, and if we two-shot them, we're only doing 260, which feels pretty bad. So with a Zigzagoon and a Scoop Up Net, we can turn that 3-shot into a 2-shot, and without that, I really don't see us beating that deck. Like, I don't think we can afford to 3-shot in ADP and still win. That being said, though, if the Zigzagoon still can't quite fix our ADP matchup consistently enough, this could become a cuttable card. You might just have to accept the bad matchup and sort of move on, and maybe use this space to just help all of your other matchups. But for the moment, like I said, guys, I'm going to attempt to improve our matchup against that deck a little bit, especially because if we attack with Zacians, or attack into Zacians afterwards, we can one-shot their Zacians. So as long as we can fix our attacks against ADP, I think we can maybe do okay in that matchup. And then from there, we have one copy of the new Kangaskhan from Darkness Ablaze as well. So the reason we're playing Kangaskhan is because with an ordinary rod, we basically only have 5 attackers to use in a game. So we need a 6th attacker in theory to give up that 6th prize our opponent can take. And I like Kangaskhan because it's probably our best Pokemon that can attack for just a twin energy. So of course it does 30 plus 90 more if one of our Pokemon was knocked out on our opponent's last turn. So it basically is the same amount of damage that our Blazikens are already doing in a game, which is nice. So yeah, this could actually become a second ordinary rod if you wanted to, or maybe even a Lana's fishing rod, since we do have some tools in the deck as well. But for the moment, going for the Kangaskhan, it improves our Pokemon communication consistency as well, which is also a bonus. Going on from there, though, we have one copy of Oricorio GX, which I've definitely found to be a necessary inclusion in this deck. So of course, if one of your Pokemon was knocked out on your opponent's last turn, you can activate the ability, draw 3 cards. So we are very combo reliant in this deck. We need every turn a Rare Candy, a Blaziken, a Twin Energy, another Torchic to replace our last Blaziken, sometimes a Pokemon tool or 2 that we run in this list as well. So usually it can be very difficult finding all of those pieces every turn off of our supporter for turns. So Oricorio is just another way we can help find what we need. And from there, we also have one copy of Crobat V as well. So Crobat V, of course, new card from Darkness Ablaze. Whenever we bench it, we draw until we have 6. It does feel kind of bad playing 2 of these different 2-prize Pokemon, but like I said, we just need so many cards every turn. I really don't think we can get there consistently every turn without actually playing some of these 2-prize Pokemon. So I definitely like Crobat over Dedenne if we are going to play something like this, though, just because, again, a stage 2 deck, guys, we very frequently don't want to actually discard our hand. So if we have a Rare Candy in hand or a Blaziken and we don't have the other combo piece, we can bench Crobat, keep that existing piece of the combo, and hopefully draw into the other piece that we need from there on. Up next from there, we have a pretty generic supporter count. We have 4 copies of Professor's Research and also 4 copies of Marnie. So of course with Research, we discard our hand, draw 7. This can be nice at pitching away fire energy sometimes to be able to get in the discard for Blaziken's attack. Marnie also is kind of nice for some disruption. Both players shuffle in, or not shuffle their hand in, but they shuffle their hand, put it at the bottom of their deck. You get 5, your opponent gets 4. So just a nice little bit of disruption. From there, though, we're playing one copy of Erica's Hospitality, another sort of tertiary draw supporter card we're playing. We don't have Cynthia in the format anymore, so this is probably the next best draw card, especially with Eternatus VMAX coming out and looking to be very popular. If your opponent has a giant bench of 8, Erica's is going to draw you a ton of cards. So of course you can only play it if you have 4 or fewer cards in hand, excluding Erica, and then you draw equal to the amount of Pokemon your opponent has in play. So these are our only draw options. Some people I think might consider Rosa, and I actually did have Rosa in earlier iterations of this list, but the issue I found is that usually the energy we need help finding is our twin energy, not our basic energies. So Rosa really doesn't do a whole lot in that regard, since it only allows us to get basic energies and not specials. So I'm just opting for straight draw in this sword deck, just because there's not really any other great ways at finding our special energies. And then from there, we have 2 copies of Boss's Orders to round out our supporter cards in the deck. Of course, just to switch our opponent's active with one of their bench and choose what we want to take knockouts on. With things like Dedenne and Crobat being weak to our Blazikens, that's also means that our Boss's Orders are probably more valuable for this deck than maybe some other ones, just because we can so easily pick off those bench sitters. Up next, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball, of course, to find our basic Pokemon, and also the discard effect from Quick Ball can help us put fire energies into the discard, which is super nice. But we also have 4 copies of Pokemon Communication as well to also find more of our Pokemon. So with Pokemon communication, of course, we do need to put a Pokemon from hand back into our deck, but then we search our deck for any Pokemon. So we can grab our Blazikens, our Combuskins, etc. You could opt for some copies of Evolution Incense, but generally speaking, I just seem to prefer the flexibility of communication, just because we can also help find our Torchics as an example in the early portions of the game, which is going to be very important. Up next, we have 4 copies of Rare Candy, pretty much a staple for a traditional Stage 2 deck like this. It's going to allow us to skip those pesky Combuskins, go straight to our Blazikens, and get attacking even quicker. So up next from there, we have 4 copies of Scoop Up Net in the deck. This is, of course, to be able to pick up those Jirachis and our Zigzagoons. Now, if we do end up cutting Galarian Zigzagoon at some point, like again, if you just want to accept the L on the ADP matchup, you could opt to change these to just switch at that point. I think there's a consideration for that. But Scoop Up Net's cool for a variety of reasons. Of course, it is kind of like a switch effectively a lot of the time, but also it increases your odds or your consistency of using Pokemon communication, because you can always pick up, those Jirachis you don't need anymore, communicate them back in deck to find maybe your Blaziken as an example. So feel free to mess around with this, guys. If you do end up cutting Zigzagoon, like I said, feel free to experiment with some copies of Switch in here as well. I think that's also equally as valid. Up next from there, we have 3 copies of Giant Bomb in the deck. This is going to be one of our math fixers. So while Blaziken is really good at attacking into these fire and fighting weak Pokemon, it's not so great against a lot of other things, unfortunately. So Giant Bomb, we need this to sort of fix our math here. So if it's a Pokemon tool card, and when it's attached to a Pokemon and they take 180 or more damage, the attacking Pokemon takes 100 damage or 10 damage counters, however you want to phrase it. So that is basically going to effectively make our Blazikens do 230 between this attack and our Giant Bombs. And then from there, to round out our trainer cards, we have 1 copy of Ordinary Rot in the deck, just as a little bit of recovery. So of course we can get up to 2 Pokemon and or up to 2 basic energies, put them back into our deck. So this is effectively going to give us 5 Blazikens to attack with throughout the course of the game, which is pretty nice. Going on from there, we have some energy, of course, to round out this deck list. We have 6 copies of Fire Energy in total here. We really don't need too many because we're always going to be recycling them with our Blazikens, but we need a decent amount in here just to be able to find them pretty quick early on in the game. That way we can quickly get them into the discard pile. But next up from there, we have 4 copies of Twin Energy in the deck as well. So of course, definitely need Twin Energy to be able to finish powering up our Blazikens here, since it does need that additional 2 energy and its attack cost. So of course, it's going to be for Blaziken and also to quickly attack with Kangaskhan. You even, I guess, in theory, could attack with a Rangoon if you really wanted to, but of course, we want these for our Blazikens. And then from there, just to round out our deck list, we also have 1 copy of Triple Acceleration Energy, because if we do recycle 5 Blazikens throughout the course of a game, we do probably want a 5th Twin Energy, and this is sort of the closest thing that we're going to have access to in the deck if we do want to do that. So of course, Triple Acceleration Energy provides 3, but you do have to discard it at the end of your turn, which is a little bit of a pain. But this is effectively going to be our 5th Twin Energy in the deck. So with that being said, though, guys, that is going to be our Blaziken deck that we're going to be taking a look at here. Like I said, Blaziken has some pretty cool things going for it. It really can't hit a ton of good stuff for weakness right now, while also knocking out some of the other popular one-prize Pokemon like Blacephalon, just as an example. But of course, I think the big challenge to this deck, like a lot of Stage 2 decks, is just a lack of space. There's so many things you kind of want to include in here. Like we don't have any stadiums in this particular list. We had to cut the 4th Giant Bomb. We don't have space for like a 3rd gusting option, like a 3rd boss, or even a Great Catcher, which Great Catcher actually might be kind of decent in this deck just because you have basically guaranteed KOs on Dedenne at any point in the game. So yeah, that's definitely the big challenge with this, and just the general consistency of Stage 2s. But if you can get Blaziken up and running, it does have some really good type advantages against a lot of different things in the game right now. But with that being said, guys, hope you did enjoy this deck profile. Definitely sound off down below in the comment section. What do you guys think about this deck? Do you think Blaziken has any shot in the meta? Definitely let me know your thoughts. But as always, like and subscribe, and if you can, consider supporting this channel as well by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up some merch from our online store at rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.